because of that income cap, two single people who both get the earned income tax credit, if they were to get married, they then would be above the cap and they would no longer qualify for it.
Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Bedford. I'm here today with the commentary editor, Conn Carroll. And Conn, you and the editorial team wrote a piece about the effort led by Senator J.D Vance to end what's known as the marriage penalty for the earned income tax credit. What happened to that effort and why is it important?
Sure. Well, what happened to it is not a lot. It was a amendment he wrote for the debt limits deal, and it actually ended up not getting voted on. There's only like 6 amendments, 3 on each side, that were voted on. But it still is important because it's something that has not been done on the Republican side, I think in a long time, if ever, which is to undo a marriage penalty within the earned income tax credit. So the earned income tax credit is a tax credit you get once per year if you are under a certain income, and you only get it if you have been working and have it's in addition to work. So if you don't have a job, you don't have income, you're not going to get this tax credit. So it encourages work and it reduces poverty. But because of that income cap, two single people who both get the earned income tax credit, if they were to get married, they then would be above the cap and they would no longer qualify for it. So a lot of people choose to stay single because of this marriage penalty, and it's just one of many marriage penalties within the welfare state. And so what J.D Vance's amendment did is it got rid of that marriage penalty, and that's an expensive thing to do. It costs about $50 billion. So what he did to fund it is he rescinded an electrical vehicle tax credit that was part of the Biden plan. And so doing that trade-off, taking away stuff from wealthy electric vehicle owners and giving that money to working parents, I thought that was a great step for the Republican Party.
You guys also wrote this week about reports. There was a big report in the Wall Street Journal, some other places, that violence against teachers is really on the rise since the pandemic. What's driving that, and how do schools sort of address that when the trend is to sort of move away from discipline for equity reasons?
Yeah, there's been a number of polls that are quite alarming. The American Psychologists Association, they did a poll about a year ago that showed 20% of all staff, so that includes both teachers, but also student counselors, etc., that 20% of staff have been assaulted, physically assaulted by students, which I found just very alarming. And that half of teachers wanted to change jobs because of that. And then more recently, the RAND Corporation did a survey also of teachers. It was actually mostly geared towards mass shootings, but they found that when they asked teachers what they were most afraid of, mass shootings is actually at the bottom of the list. And violence among students, but also violence towards teachers, just assault, was high on the list as well, which is also very worrying. And this comes from basically people are tolerating it. That's what's happening. When you let something happen, more of it happens. And so because of a Dear Colleague letter that Obama sent back in 2012 that looked at the discrepancies between student disciplines among racial groups, certainly that black students get more suspended more often, they threatened lawsuits against school districts unless they equalize that out. So what a lot of school districts did in order to equalize those numbers is just basically not holding students accountable for their violent behavior. And so when you don't hold people accountable for violent behavior, there's going to be more violent behavior, and that's why you're seeing these more assaults on teachers.
Finally, you also wrote to this week about NEPA and why some of these environmental bureaucracies stop, projects from getting built, halt construction. Tell us about why you're angry about that.
Well, I don't know if we're angry about it, but we're coming on a weird time where you have Democrats who very much want to transform how our nation gets their energy. And that's going to take a lot of construction. It's going to take a lot of infrastructure. It's going to take a lot of transmission lines. But what Democrats are discovering is that when you try to build these transmission lines, it takes years and years just to get the permitting in place to build them. And so Republicans have known this for a long time, that the permitting process, which is hampered by a law called the National Environmental Planning Act, it was passed in 1970, really makes it very difficult to build anything, whether it's housing, roads, or in this case, transmission lines. And so what Democrats are saying is that they want to reform NEPA. They want to make permitting easier, but just for their clean energy projects. So they're trying to have it both ways. They're trying to both make permitting easier for the infrastructure they like, but keep it harder for all the other infrastructure that we desperately need. And so we'll see how it plays out. Hopefully, we'll make permitting easier for everything, and we can make it easier to build stuff again.
Well, Conn, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more writing from Conn and the rest of the commentary team at washingtonexaminer.com.